All right. I'm so excited to introduce our host because I'm a huge fan of Marek's. Marek, you may know as one of the artists and editors of the El Viaje Más Caro, the most costly journey project, which is just amazing and a whole session to itself to discuss. But also, Marek has been working really, really hard on a lot of other projects, one being the ongoing Civil War Diary of Colby Freeman, which I cannot recommend highly enough. And on the surface, you're thinking, oh, it's sort of, literally just taking some historical documents and turning them into these amazing cartoons, which is a fascinating thing in terms of adaptation. But also, there's really interesting graphic medicine elements in it. And if you want to check that out, you can go to our website and look up Marek's name, and you can find a really neat entry about some of the work he's done that's relevant to graphic medicine, even in the Colby Freeman project. But also, Marek is a tremendous educator and has a ton of online videos that are so wonderful for both exercises to do yourself, but also great for teaching. And I highly recommend also being joining his Patreon, because you get those emails to your inbox with these amazing exercises and things he does online, and opens up a world of online access to his archive, which is tremendous. So I will stop going on and on about how much I adore Marek Bennett and turn this session over to him.
Oh, thank you, MK. That's so kind of you. Yeah, and I posted a few links as you were saying those projects. I posted the links in the chat. It's wonderful to see this crowd turn out. I'm in Massachusetts, United States right now. I'm from Henniker, New Hampshire, but I'm down helping a family member with recovery from a planned surgery. So this is perfect to gather with this group, the Drawing Together group, and make some artwork together. So MK and I don't know, where did we meet at Vermont, at University of Vermont at a nonfiction comics conference, right?
Yes, it was the one that was organized by the Vermont Folklife Center. Yes.
Yeah. And so I've always been very impressed with graphic medicine's work and with MK's work. So I'm honored to be here drawing with all of you. And I can't wait to see what we do together. So I was telling MK before this, I literally kind of avoided preparing and coming up with something that I wanted to present, because a lot of what I'm going to show you today, all of what I show you today, is kind of based on improvisation, centered on improvisation. As a cartoonist, like MK said, I do epic graphic novels about drawn from historical sources, like the Civil War Diary of Freeman Colby. And this fall, I found myself working with a lot of Civil War sources from 1864 that were just intensely graphic, both the hospital scenes and the battlefield scenes, of course, and people's processing grief and stress and trauma through their letters and diaries. And I found it started affecting training my imagination to work with that material day in, day out, full time, started affecting how my imagination worked. And I noticed, I didn't intend to do this, but I noticed I was also starting another artistic practice on the side. So I want to show you that other artistic practice today, and see what it makes you think of, see what it does for you. So all you'll need today is a pen or a marker, or my pens and markers, and a piece of paper. I happen to have my little travel sketchbook here. So I'm just going to switch over to my desktop camera, and I invite you to pick up a marker or whatever drawing tool you have, and open up to a new page. And I'll show you a couple techniques, and maybe MK, I might call for some suggestions or ideas, and maybe you can be my first suggester, and then maybe other people, if you have suggestions, you can put things in the chat. So I'm not I'm a cartoonist just by compulsion, and by I just never stopped drawing. So a good part of my life has just been dedicated to this faith that that in making marks, we can discover new things about ourselves and about the world. And I find myself often, if I'm tired or stressed, or I just need to take a break from everything, I like nothing better than to open up to a fresh piece of paper and clear my head and start making marks without planning ahead, without saying, I want to draw this or that. So that's what I'm going to do today. So I invite you to follow along with me as much as you want, but also change things whenever you feel like it and take it in your own direction whenever you feel like it. First thing that I'll do, just so I can show you the basics of what I'm going to do today, I call this mirror doodling. And I happen to have a little mirror here at the table. So I may use that a little bit. You don't need a mirror today, but after we draw this, you may want to try it. Try what I show you. So first thing I'm going to do is I might start up in a corner. You can choose any corner of the page. And I'm going to think of that corner as a center and draw a circle around it. And it's going to just be like a part of a pizza, a part of a pie, part of a circle. And I'll just kind of draw around like that. And it can really be any shape, but I like to start with circles. There's something soothing about a circle. If I can draw a curve, there's a sense of like change, continual change. There's something nice about continual change, changing continuity. And all we're going to do today, actually, let me double that line just to see what happens. I make a line, and if I make another line that sort of follows it, not only do I have two lines, but I have that space between them. And there's something really interesting about that lines by their nature define something that isn't there, but now I see it as there. Maybe that's a ring instead of two lines. And as a cartoonist, I work with pens and markers and ink a lot. So I work with lines a lot. I wonder if we have any painters out there or other types of illustrators who might find something different here. Now, let me just show you this technique. I'll take this mirror, and I find this really interesting. If I put it up to that corner, I actually get a half circle there. If I put it up to this side, I get another quarter of the circle. Actually, if I take it like this and put it up to a third mirror, I can see a full circle. And that looks pretty round. I'm surprised. I thought it would not come out very round when I tried this. And I was thinking in my little bit of prep I did, I thought I would purposefully draw a less round circle and show you, see, it's okay to mess up right from the beginning. Now that I test it with my mirror, that looks shockingly round to me. So I guess I messed up by drawing a perfect circle. Oh well. So that's the point I like to make to myself to help myself relax as I'm doodling, is it's impossible to mess up, or it's all one big error. It's all one big mess up, right? That right from the start, it's going to be itself. And I have no plan here. I have no idea what to do, but I do have some habits. Like for instance, I find when I doodle, I like to doodle suns or flowers because they're round and they're radial. So maybe if I do these little corners off of here, they don't have to line up or match or anything, but that might start to look like a sun or a ring with flag pennants or something. Wow, I'm shocked at how round my circle was. Usually they don't, usually they look a little floppy or blobby, and that's totally fine. Here, I'll do a blobby one inside here. And do something kind of blobby and irregular. And maybe another one like that. Right from the, I like to, when I'm doodling, I like right from the start to do something unexpected, because that jolts me out of my imagination starts to think, oh, it'll be a sun, maybe clouds and skies. And I like to jolt myself out of that. And you can test it as much as you want. There's an interesting symmetry to these unsymmetrical shapes, though. When you hold it up to the mirror, it sort of reminds us that there is a bigger structure, even though we don't. Even though I can't see the center on the page, I know it's there and I'm drawing around it. Let's just keep going here. I'm going to keep adding in here. I like the sun idea. I like radiating things because they make me feel warm and colorful and shining. So maybe I'll just make some more sunbeams coming out like this. And this is one of the techniques I find really helps in doodling, is I create a pattern and I do it again and do it again. And that's what makes a pattern, a repeated line. And then if at some point you want to break that pattern, maybe I can tuck an inside sunbeam in like that. That becomes interesting in itself. Now I feel like that becomes a pattern, that breaking of the pattern, if I keep doing it. These are starting to look like fangs. Sometimes I think I'm drawing something really soothing and it becomes a monster. And I don't know, monsters, I find monsters interesting and soothing as a cartoonist. So what are some other shapes? You could put them in the chat, or you could just try it out on your own. We've got like circles. Maybe I'll put some circles between these arms. MK, what are some shapes you like to doodle when you're just kind of daydreaming on the page?
I find myself doodling stars a lot. My stars and hearts are kind of my go-tos.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of starting from that. And then, even if you just filled up a page with hearts, that's kind of comforting. I remember like my third grade classroom and people doodling hearts and rainbows and stuff, or battle scenes, depending on which side of the room you sat on. Let's put some stars in here. Maybe I'll do some round. I like sort of round armed stars, but of course you could also do like pointy stars, or you could do, maybe I'll do all sorts of stars, breaking the pattern here. You're welcome to try anything you see me doing here, but you're also welcome to just take it in your own direction. Let's see. Many armed stars, maybe stars within stars. Now you don't have to build out from one corner. Oh, the other thing I did here that I meant to mention and really point out, I'm starting black and white because that's fewer choices for me. You can start with any color, obviously, but at some point you may decide you want to change colors, right? And feel free to do that. I'm going to do that at some point. I feel like I still have something to doodle with black and white here, but I may change colors at some point. Anywhere there's a gap, I might fill it in, or I might leave a gap. But importantly, there's really no mistakes here. Even if sometimes I'm doodling with people and they say, how is it you make it a perfect doodle every time? And I love that because it reminds me that when you watch somebody else doodle, it looks perfect. But if you find as you're doodling and that little bit of your imagination is saying, oh, that doesn't quite look right. Like when I drew this star, it didn't seem to fit. And a little piece of my imagination said, there, see, you messed up this whole doodle already. That's a voice that only us older cartoonists have. I find it's wonderful to work with young cartoonists because they don't think that way. They just make marks and go with it and accept it for what it is. Let's think also about connection. What if one of these pieces connects to another? Maybe I can bring a line or a couple lines in. I love these noodle lines, I call them, that sort of loop around things, curl around things. This is the same as that beginning ring line we made, but it's leading one part of the picture to another part of the picture. And you can jump these around and then draw other stars behind them. There's all different ways to kind of surprise yourself. And the moment you start to get tired with a pattern, change it up, right? Like I was about to connect. Yeah, I think I will connect the star. I kind of like these things being connected, but maybe also I'll just send a line out in this direction. Now I could do this for hours, but maybe in a couple more moves, if you think of this as like a game where you're making moves, maybe in a couple more moves, I will shift colors just to see what happens there. And you might, if you have a mirror handy, every now and then you might want to take this and check. Oh, this looks like this could be a fun coloring page, actually. I kind of want to keep it black and white and then color it later. You can check in the mirror and see how it's starting to look. Really, you'll want to take it to a big mirror to get the big picture at the end.
I have some insights from the chat.
Yeah.
So we've got waves, always waves.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you want me to give you a bunch at once or wait, just knowing there's a few in the bank here.
Let's hear them. Let's hear them. People can,
okay.
And then without seeing anything, people can interpret them as they see fit.
Flowers as a go-to.
Mm-hmm.
Hash marks, lines going for a walk.
Mm-hmm.
Triangles. My go-tos are feathers and leaves. Worms and fancy caterpillars.
All right. I love that.
Handprints.
Ooh.
Infinite lazy eights.
Oh, cool. I can't wait to see.
Sorry.
I can't wait to see some of these when we when you
Right.
finally share them.
Right. I like to occupy much of the page as soon as possible with lines and then find ways to occupy the negative space.
Yes, yeah. Actually, that makes me think that's something I meant to mention. I'm glad we brought that up. I'm working kind of piecemeal here, but one thing you may want to try too is occupy the space, like reach out and grab some of the space. Let me try this with maybe a thicker marker. I'll just take a thick line here, and I don't know where this is going. Who knows? I'll just like grab a bunch of space there, or mark a bunch of space. I don't want to be too acquisitional here. And maybe that becomes something that other things get tucked behind, right? And actually, I could even continue them in behind the stuff that's already there. If I want to have like continuity here, maybe this is a worm. Somebody mentioned worms. Maybe I give that with my pen, I'll give that like a curved lines along it so it looks like worms or pipes or something. Sometimes I get really concrete in these and I'm drawing like vines and lightning bolts and flowers. Sometimes I keep it totally abstract, but I just try to go with whatever occurs to me as I'm drawing. Because I spend so much as a cartoonist, I spend so much of my day kind of intentionally creating these pages and trying to get it to work right from panel to panel. There's something really refreshing about just saying, I just thought of a big thick line like a worm, and now I will draw that in. I like that effect, so I'm going to keep the pattern going with this one. Maybe I'll break the pattern and I'll let this one get bigger towards the, oh, no, it looks like it needs to continue in here. Maybe it goes right through here. You're just kind of finding your way. And I find, because I may have said this before, but I find the reason I do these as a mirror doodle is I easily fall into the trap of trying to plan the picture and trying to say like, well, all right, it's got worms coming into the center. So then on the other side, it'll have this or that. I start planning it out, but not being able to draw the rest of the picture and not knowing what that's going to look like. I have to kind of let go of that and just assume, just have faith that that structure is there, and it will be there once we get all the pieces in place in this section. And to reassure that faith, you can look in the mirror and you'll see those, ooh, look at those. This does look kind of fun, goofy, monstery. You can see those things stretching off into the distance on the other side of the picture. What we're doing here is really an enormous picture, but we're only drawing a little piece of it. So it's very economical in that way. I want to show you something I really like to do with these pipes. Sometimes I will stop doing these. If I'm doing the contour lines, I'll stop for a little section and do little pipes inside it. And I guess you could do that as much as you wanted to in there. But there's something comforting too, knowing that within each of these pictures, there are whole other bunches of parts and shapes and doodles. Maybe this one will come apart into lots of little worm pipe tentacles. And because we didn't plan it out and we just kind of went with the idea, it's like I get the same feeling when I'm doing 24-hour comics. I feel like I'm not responsible for what's happening on the page, that I'm just discovering something that maybe was already out there. Or it's out there now, but I'm not responsible for making it happen. I'm responsible for witnessing it, and just, sure, my hand's keeping that pen going, but it's not my conscious intention that's saying, let's do this or that. It's just bouncing ideas off other ideas. Oh, I kind of like that. Now, I did say I was going to change to another color. So I don't know if, MK, do you have a suggestion for a color? I have my basic rainbow markers right here.
I'd go with red or orange. Your call.
Right. I'll go with orange because that's much lighter. Let's see. So maybe this orange, I'm no ideas yet. So maybe I'll just trace the outline here and give this kind of a glow. I noticed the orange does blur the black a little bit, so I'll have to be careful about that. Know your tools. Boy, adding a little color really changes it. The other thing I said I might do as a practice, I've been getting into this lately. I'll start a doodle and then I'll leave it unfinished for a day or two, or I'll come back to it whenever I am inspired to. And there's something really fun about that. You're kind of collaborating with your past improvisation. So I just had the urge, once I started working with color here, I just had the urge to switch to this other page over here and start working in color over here. I don't always, sometimes when I'm doodling, I really don't like the doodle. Like my conscious artist evaluating mind is saying, oh, I don't like how this is coming out. This one I kind of do like, and I'm kind of surprised by it. I don't know what's so surprising, but I did not expect to be drawing. This is like nothing like any of the flowers or suns or monsters I usually end up doodling. I guess that's because we're doodling together, and we as a group, you and I, MK, haven't doodled like this together and taken suggestions from each other together. So maybe that's what's making it different, right? And that has, you know, the other thing, there's sort of this is almost like a fractal nature to the doodle in time, in that you can stop at any moment, and as a doodle, it is complete. Or you can keep going. We could work on this for another hour and it would then be complete, you know? There's something really open-ended about it. I think I'm gonna pause this one and start my next page. I don't know how long you wanna go with this. I see we're at like the half-hour mark. Do people wanna start a new one or keep working on your own one?
I think I'm going to keep working on this one. We had some other interesting thoughts to throw out from the chat. Hexagons, spirals, which is what I was just currently drawing. And of course, we have a great history of spirals in graphic medicine. And then crowns. When I was a kid, I liked to draw crowns, tiaras, queen crowns, evil crowns, magical crowns. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, this is great. Okay, that gave me so many ideas. Like I said, just making it up as we go along. I might just switch this around, and I'm going to go back to waves, and then we'll build it into spirals, maybe even crowns. I don't know how we'll do that. So you don't, of course, you don't have to start in a corner. When I start in a corner, things tend to grow out and radiate. They become like the sunburst or this flower. But maybe here, I'll start the spiral in the middle of the page. Maybe that's all I'll start with. And if I'm going to do a mirror doodle, I mean, it's possible to do a mirror doodle at any point in the page. If I'm doing a mirror doodle, I tend to build towards an edge or a corner and see how that grows. So I might grow, since this one's built on this bottom corner, I might grow up. Or no, you know what I'll do? Since I'm right-handed, I'll grow away from this bottom corner. And maybe these will meet. I don't know, sometimes the pages grow together. So maybe I'll just do a spiral leading into another spiral, and then just grow that into another spiral and let this kind of spill like a wave over the page. Anywhere there's a little too much space, I can just add another piece of a spiral. There's something really soothing about this. It's like, it's unplanned structure, I guess. Because everywhere there are all these little centers, they all relate to each other somehow, and there's a sense of motion, but I don't know where the next spiral is going to go or come from. They'll start it up here and go in the other direction. And I'm keeping these all the same color. I mean, you could theoretically change and have each spiral be a different color or something, but I'm going to have this be like a spill of blue, and it'll start to maybe, this looks like water spilling to me. So maybe I'll think of like waves. Even the abstract stuff I find I get pretty concrete about. But that's probably because I've just trained my imagination to draw the story on the page as a history cartoonist and an autobiographical cartoonist and a diary cartoonist. I tend to be pretty concrete on the page. So that's probably a habit I have. But I can't help but see this as spilling swirls of currents. Maybe I'll just let one spill off the corner of the page here. And that's a spiral going off the edge. I find doodling like this really soothing to do early in the morning or late at night, after a long day of whatever you're doing. It can be a great way to recharge. It can be a great way, actually, if you start a doodle, like get it to this point and then go to bed, you'll wake up in the morning and come to it fresh and maybe add a new color, right? And you may find that's a good way to kind of teach your brain to keep growing and creating even in your sleep. Because if this is the last thing you see before you go to sleep, you'll wake up. Usually I find I wake up with an idea of like, oh, I want to add green to that, or crooked lines or something. Oh, look at this. I kind of feel like, look at this reaching around towards the worm tentacle. Maybe this is one big doodle, right? Oh, I meant to be taking snapshots of each stage as we did this, but of course I forget and get into the doodling. So maybe we can pull some stills from the video.
Yeah, I've done a couple while you were going.
Oh, good. I like doing these. I'll put these on my Patreon sometimes with like a step-by-step. And it's so, for me as a doodler, looking back and seeing how people like assemble simple pieces into these complex, long-running epic panoramas. I find that just fascinating.
So Marek, you said that while you were working, sometimes your brain will sort of start judging. And how do you silence that and just sort of get back into the improvisational? How do you manage that?
I think the improvisation is central to that, to just say, hey, I didn't come to this saying, let's draw an amazing picture of waves and robot flowers or whatever this is. I came to it saying, let's just see what happens when we draw. And whatever happens, sometimes I do a doodle like this and I think, oh, I don't really like how that came out. And that's okay. If I guess if I were a stone carver, I would have to be a little more evaluative about it. But as someone who works with relatively cheap materials, and I find the process is really valuable. I find it pretty easy in this setting to say, you know what? I don't have to like this. I don't have a goal for it, other than to be present as it is created, as it comes about. And so I guess I could fail by like not paying attention, by sitting here and clicking and doing screenshots every step of the doodle. I guess that would be, I wouldn't be as present for the doodle. So maybe that's why I don't do it. And in my own cartooning work, of course, it's essential to be able to evaluate. And like I'm now finishing up and doing the editing on what will be an almost 500-page graphic novel. And I need to look at every page and be like, all right, are there any dumb typos here? Is this readable? Does it get the right sense across? Does it accurately portray the people, the actual people who are, who are the characters in the story? I need to think that way. So I find it really refreshing to be able to take a little space and just let the artwork happen. That helps me get back to my cartooning on the book with fresh, recharged imagination. So it's kind of a restorative healing process, I think. And especially as I said in the beginning, working with materials from the American Civil War in 1864. I mean, they're really harrowing accounts. And I don't want to be thinking about this stuff all the time, but in order to tell the story, I have to really pay close attention to it. And as I work on it, of course, current events keep getting closer and closer to the history too. The events of the history are more and more resonant with what's going on in the world. And that's, added stress. I'm very aware of the good fortune of being able to work in peace at a sunny desk on this material. But at the same time, I found myself, like I said at the beginning, I found myself starting to, my imagination is trained now to look for these images of graphic violence. I mean, I'm okay, you know, it's not I find there was one moment this winter where I went out to fill the bird feeder and the steps were kind of icy. And I found my imagination just thinking like, yeah, you know, if I slipped on these steps, this terrible thing would happen and this terrible thing would happen. And I better like leave a note at my desk in case anybody finds me so they can also, you know, take care of this and that. And I realized, wait a minute, that's my imagination, like working with these stories and working with this material and just internalizing so much of that stress, because you have to if you're going to draw and understand and empathize with the storytellers.
Yeah, and I'm seeing in the chat that really resonates with the kind of work many people here do, because they're telling difficult stories, and we do difficult work in the same sort of way. That's an interesting example of the way in which it kind of takes over if you don't have an outlet for it in a way like this.
Yeah, so this, like, I found, you know, when I'm starting to feel those effects, in whatever way, if I sit and do a couple swirls, a part of me is, I'm not looking to like draw the perfect circle or draw the perfect spiral, but a part of me can look at that spiral and be like, oh yeah, that's a spiral. That's cool. Okay, we created something today that you know, just exists on its own and doesn't need to be evaluated or solved or anything. And especially if I'm feeling that way, sometimes it's really helpful to start a doodle and then walk away from it and come back to it later, because then I don't even have to finish. I don't even have to make a decision about, oh, this is done or not. You know, I can just start it, let it be. And then if I just have 3 or 4 minutes, it'll just be a couple spirals, but I can come back to it the next day and add a couple more. And over time it grows. Just that's very soothing to me also, that creation and survival just happens incrementally, step by step. And again, it's like a feeling of faith. That's the only word I can think of. That faith that when I like these spirals on their own, but when I take that mirror and hold it up to them, there's this structure, this symmetry and structure that I didn't know. Not that there has to be symmetry and structure in everything to be okay. Sometimes you want things to be chaotic looking and unsymmetrical, but somehow holding the mirror up to that doodle and saying, oh, all the lines connect. I didn't plan that, but there's this cool little frog face in the spirals, you know. There's something really rewarding to that, at least as an artist, to knowing that that's there. And actually, I was reminded as I was doing some of these this winter. I'm going to switch colors. What did we say? We had another suggestion. Oh yeah, of crowns. And so we have spirals. These look almost wave-like. Let me add I love the waves. I love the water waves in ancient Mayan codices. They're these amazing rainy season deluge waterfalls in these ancient codices that run sort of like this, and they'll run all through the calendars, these codices. So maybe there's like a waterfall pouring out of these waves and crossing the midline of my doodle. Just got totally distracted by the water. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah, the other suggestions you made, MK, or that we had in the chat. Somebody recommended crowns. And I'll show you another little thing that I like to do with some of these when I want to add a certain schnazziness to it is I'll put a jewel in there. Maybe like it'll just be a circle to start with, but then I'll do like a hexagon. We had a mention of those, or a 5 or 6 sided shape. And then from each of the corners, I'll just do a little line out. And suddenly it becomes like this finely cut inset gem. Maybe, and I switched to red just to get some contrast, but maybe red and purple. That might be interesting. So one of the things I was going to say about color, so I think I'm adding, oh, look at that, jewels in spirals. Never tried that before. One of the things I was going to say about color in these drawings is I have like very basic markers I tend to use. You can do this with colored pencils and crayons and things, but I just have these, what are they, 8 colors? 7 colors that I use, water-based markers, and I usually keep them in the, oh no, they're 8. Where did I put the orange? I usually keep them in the proverbial rainbow order, you know, Roy G. Biv. So let's see if I can do this. There we go. Of course, there's no indigo violet, there's just purple. And I find it really helps to start with one of the colors and then add colors that are next to it, in either direction. For instance, well, actually, you know, one of my favorite things to add into a doodle is, let's just add a rainbow in here. Why not? Rainbows are like, whoops, inherently beautiful and soothing in some way, at least to me. Maybe I'll curve it in a crooked rainbow sort of way. Let's just see what happens when we add that in. So if I'm doing something in red and I want to add something in orange around it, those will kind of fit because they're together in the rainbow. I'm definitely not a color person. I can be kind of gaudy sometimes. So take my doodle advice with a grain of color salt, but red and orange will always fit together, right? Orange and yellow will fit together. They have a lot in common color-wise. Yellow and green will fit together. Purple and red down here, my jewel in the purple, because purple circles back around to red in that rainbow spectrum, if you think of it circularly. But then if you want to be jarring, you know, purple and green don't have a lot in common. If you want to be kind of jarring, add a green outline around that purple and that red, and boom, suddenly you've got something. Well, it's either going to be really beautiful or really gaudy, or maybe both. Right? You've got something that really makes it pop and stand out. So that's, yeah.
So we have there's a really interesting question in the chat. Is it still a doodle if you use it to explore an element of drawing you're wanting to improve? Like, I want to work on how I draw fire right now. Can't decide if working on that messes with the spirit of this kind of doodling.
Well, I think what makes it a doodle for me, that's a good question that we'll all have to sit with and doodle with. I think what makes it a doodle for me is I don't do any penciling, as you can see. I don't do any planning. I don't like sit down with and make an outline or a thumbnail sketch and say, oh, I want to have the rainbow come in over here and maybe some tentacles here. I just start and sure, I'm working on spirals. I'm getting slightly better at spirals each one I draw, hopefully, if you believe in progress. And maybe I'm learning something about rainbows, and over the course of time flowing forwards, I'll know more about rainbows when I'm done with this doodle than I did at the beginning, at least curving rainbows like this. So sure, you're always practicing and learning if you're showing up for the artwork, if you're present with it, right? But for me, what makes it a doodle is that I purposefully don't set out with a goal. And if I start to get a goal, like, oh, I want to do rainbows, I might take this purple and send it off in a different direction, you know, and break the goal that I set for myself, right? And what does that open up? Like suddenly I have this interesting thing with this rainbow. I was all set to just have the rainbow curve around and be kind of cute, but suddenly it's like opening up and there's this gap in the rainbow, and what's inside that gap? That's where I discover something, right? And maybe it's like, it's going to look scary if I put fangs in there, but I guess that's the first thing I thought of. So maybe I can do teeth instead of fangs. My go-to is always drawing fangs on things too. So maybe that's a habit that I'm getting away from. Maybe there's even an eye inside the mouth, something peering out at you. If you think concretely, maybe it's just a ring. Now, a part of me who was like, oh, I wanted to draw a rainbow. You just totally spoiled the rainbow. Like, a part of me is kind of disappointed by that. But the doodle rule of like, don't plan it, you know, that just found something in there that wasn't there. I don't know if you can see that. It wasn't there when we started. It wasn't even there till a few seconds before you asked that question and I decided to take the purple in a different direction. That to me is a doodle then. But we learned something and we discovered something, I don't know if it's creepy or cute, but we discovered something, right? So that's what makes it doodleicious to me. And that it's a practice of like keeping intention and keeping expectations from somehow warping whatever might happen when we make marks together or on your own. I feel like maybe I'll add a couple more jewels in here just to kind of get a rhythm of these jewels. I might do the same red set in purple just so there's kind of something echoing around here. I tend to fill up the page. That's like my own little habit. And I don't need to fill up the page. Maybe I need to leave some white space, right? And let the picture kind of breathe. That's important in comics. Little breathing space. It's important in teaching and drawing together. Just leave some breathing space. Do we have any other suggestions of pieces to add into our doodles?
There is just commentary. Someone actually says that Heidi says she loves purple and green together. It's one of her favorite color combos.
Oh yeah, no, I don't mean to suggest it doesn't go together. I think like take something like purple and orange together, or purple and green, or I love purple and red. It's just so different. I don't know the exact terminology for it. I just know in my doodles, I find when I want something to kind of jolt and jar, I take that approach. Well, what's a color I don't expect to be there? Here's red. If I add, it's very contrasting, add green around that red. So that's going to jump in a different way from if I add purple around that red. Yeah, I didn't mean to imply they don't go together.
Yeah. And Abru is, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like some combinations I find soothing, some combinations I find jarring, and that jarring can be really interesting and really helpful to the picture.
Yeah, I once interviewed a person whose specialty, and some people on the chat might know far more about this than I do. Her specialty was art for hospitals. And she talked about, in particular units in hospitals, depending on what the nature of the unit is and what the goal of the place is, you would want different colors. Like in a pediatric unit, I once did some art for a pediatric unit and they had me edit out all the red because they didn't want red in the unit, like it in the art, and that it would be frightful. But in a labor and delivery unit, you want a piece of art that has a really strong central focal point, so people can focus during labor, right? And then she said something like, for a, maybe an oncology suite, you would want, where maybe people get chemo, like really serene art, so people can sort of escape into the images or whatever. But I don't know how that connects to what you were saying, because now I've babbled for a while, but I find that really fascinating.
That would be great. So like I'm just trying to think like a medical doodler. You come into one of those departments and they're like, we need something with a strong center. So you take as a mirror doodler, I would take the center at the corner approach, and then you'd have, this is definitely not a soothing wall mural for any ward, but you'd have something really radial. And then if you want it kind of flowing, maybe you start in the middle so that that's less radial. And then you choose your colors accordingly. And yeah, that you could totally, I could see using that to guide how you doodled, and you'd have a very different approach. That reminded me of, I'm going to switch to maybe a thin gel pen just to see how that changes things. Because I've been using these markers all along, and they're strong colors and thick. But somebody mentioned cross hatching. So let me go back to just a black pen here. And I'm going to turn this over so I see it afresh. Just complete this little reaching arm of green, because that looks kind of stubby, and I'm thinking maybe it comes across the page at least in a couple spirals.
We have a question in the chat. Abra's wondering if you ever have the urge to doodle on public spaces.
I don't think I personally have the urge to like draw on someone's wall or something. Although, I don't know, you'd have to ask my teachers from school. I bet I filled a bunch of whiteboards with doodles, and I actually, sometimes I tell the story. Oh, see, this pen isn't working, so I guess I'm switching to a different. Sometimes I tell the story of how I really got seriously into cartooning, and it was through teaching. And I got into teaching through working in a bakery. And I was because I like to write and draw, although I wasn't really doing much of it at the time. The baker asked me to do the weekly message board menu on the whiteboard. And so it grew more and more ornate as the season went on, as I worked at this bakery at an apple orchard, Orchard Hill Bakery in Alstead, New Hampshire. And we'd work in all this political commentary and jokes and quotes and things. And I just loved doing that. I had a weekly audience. People would come in, they needed to know what breads we're baking. And while they were getting that information, there were all these little things to fill the corners and fill the spaces with, a message that people could respond to in some way. So that's very public, and that was very doodle based on a whiteboard, and I loved that job. And because I was doing that, each week the school across the street asked me if I would come and do a summer camp for kids on cartooning or drawing. And my first reaction was like, oh, well, I'm not a teacher. I don't work with kids much. I don't know how that would go. And I thought about it a little, and I thought it's worth a try. And it was just life-changing to do this kind of artwork. Well, to draw comics, not doodles so much, with a group of kids for a week straight, Monday through Friday. And at the end of it, we each had a completed comic book. And that's how I got started in teaching, is by drawing bread menus at the bakery. And so I guess I have done some of that. But no, I don't tend to, I don't have the impulse to like go do graffiti doodles. Although sometimes when I'm doodling like this, I feel like, oh, I want to share this somehow. I want to project it, or I'll make a little postcard of the ones I like and share those with my patrons, or send them out to friends. And it can be, it can go up on the refrigerator or something, but it's more, for me, it's the process, like drawing together, that is the really interesting thing. And the side effect, there's a side effect of a finished doodle that hopefully looks interesting and documents that process. But everything on this doodle, comes out of what people have suggested or what we've talked about, and I can look back and be like, oh, that's when we were talking of clarifying about purple and green and how colors go together. It's all here in the doodle. How about you folks? I mean, has anybody had any life-changing experiences when you just take a little time to draw in an undirected way with somebody and swap ideas that way?
a couple of comments and a question from the chat. That Emma responded that the way you took the attitude about teaching sounds like worth a try was sort of it sounds like the attitude you take while you're doodling as well.
That's a good point, yes. Although I really don't recommend Doodle Mind for running a classroom all the time. There's a lot of prep to do. But yes, you have to have that attitude of like, oh, this isn't going exactly as planned. Okay, it is what it is. Yeah, that's true. There are a lot of connections.
And a question from Alice. Do you have any recommendations for history comics aside from Colby Freeman?
How did you know? This isn't really exactly a history comic, but I just read Superman Smashes the Klan by Jean Len Yang. And yeah. Oh my goodness, I didn't know what to expect going into it because I appreciate Superman as an immigrant story, but I've never like read Superman as a Superman fan. But I picked it up and I thought, well, this might be cool. And I'm so glad I did. It's such an amazing recentering, retelling, representing of this myth that you think you know, the superhero Superman from Krypton myth, in a very earthly context. So, and there's a wonderful author's note afterwards that talks about Yang's family history and his history with Superman and comics. And yeah, highly recommend that. And I love his Boxers and Saints, by the way, too, as a history comic, as a more overt history comic. There's so many. Why don't I'll put before we're done or right towards the end when we're signing off, I'll put my website back in there in the chat. And I have under Comics Workshop, I have a recommended reading page, which is kind of out of date, but I try to add some titles every now and then to it. And there's a history section on that. That's better than me trying to think of things off the top of my head.
So we're getting.
I could recommend one more history comic off the top of my head that just came to me. One of my favorite manga artists is Shigeru Mizuki, and he did a multi-volume autobiographical work because his life, he was born at the beginning of the Showa era in Japan, at the beginning of the 20th century. So it's a wonderful look back in almost an entire century of history through his family's eyes, his eyes, and a lot of sort of newsreel drawings. It's an amazing work. Showa. Sorry, MK.
No. So what I was going to say that I've noticed some people putting some comments about their doodles in the chat. I was wondering if maybe we're at about 2 o'clock. We could take some time to share and see, turn the camera and see what people have done.
That would be great. And I wanted to put out there, I've been posting a few of these publicly. I just tag them as Mirror Doodle. And maybe there's other tags people use. But if anybody wants to send me a snapshot of your doodle, I'd be happy to unfold it in 4-fold symmetry. And we could share those. I also I'm posting a whole bunch of them over at my Patreon, so we'll put that link in the chat at the end. And it would be great to share over there. I'd love to see what everybody's doodling.